Welcome to SoapBox, the group therapy session for the UK advice profession, disguised as a podcast. Together, we chew the cord on the trends, tensions, and total nonsense shaping the business of financial advice today. It's Advisor 3.0 SoapBox edition.
Welcome to Advisor 3.0, the Soapbox edition. I'm Matt Pitcher, and I'm here with my brother from another mother, Abraham. And today we're diving into a completely new set of topics chosen by all of us around the table, hosts and guests alike. Our guest for today is Helena Wardle, AI Queen, CEO and founder of Ada. Helen has been a financial planner. She's run a financial planning business. She's built a direct-to-consumer financial coaching business online and has now built the AI planner that is one day, I'm told, going to become AI overlord. Welcome both.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Not sure I'm queen,
Right.
but yeah.
Well, yeah. And let's dive straight into the topics. And I thought the good one to start with was one that came to me, but in a slightly roundabout way. So as you probably both know, I'm only on social media for professional purposes, not personal purposes at all. But my wife came to me in the last week and said, you've got to see this. The FCA is bombarding me with adverts on my social media, so on Instagram and Facebook and all the rest of it. And they're promoting their hype type revealer. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. I wonder what they're after my wife for. So I went in and did the FCA's hype type revealer, which is for the benefit of the audience who haven't done it, is a web-based program that runs a little bit like a WhatsApp chat where you engage and you get people trying to promote investment scams, probably a little bit of crypto, a little bit of vanilla stock market investing, using various techniques, and just what it tries to do is see how you respond to those prompts. So I thought it was interesting. I thought I'd bring it to the table for today. We've got two techies with us, so it'd be great to get a view from two technical people rather than from my point of view. I mean, my view is the regulator's clearly trying to reach the unadvised and just get them to understand a bit more about behavioural finance and how they respond to these kind of things. But Abraham, if we start with you, with your tech head on, what did you think?
What is this? I mean, I played with this thing and I have to what is it? It is stupid. You know, this thing what is this supposed to do? It's supposed to kind of use, psychology to ultimately reveal your hype type, whether you're the kind of person who will who invests based on hype or not. I don't see anyone taking this seriously. Anyone with any amount of money. Young people, if this was, so my thinking was, if this was aimed at young people, getting on the starting out on the investment journey, they will kind of see through this rubbish anyway. And if this was aimed at experienced, even self-directed investor, let alone advised investor, they're not gonna bother with this. Why do they spend our money, yours and mine, FCA fees on this ridiculous nonsense? Sorry, I am sitting on the fence on this one.
Are you?
You haven't got a clear view then. I mean, judging by the look and feel of it, the only reassurance I would give you is I don't think they've spent a lot of money on it, to be absolutely fair.
No, the UI is horrible.
Yeah, but so let's take a step back. Why have they done this? Do you know how many people are in WhatsApp groups talking about investing because they have no way to get help? There's influencers of all these little groups and they have DMs and private messages, and people are getting help in that way. So I actually commend them for being pretty progressive in gamifying something to help people just bring to, like, if they sent out "don't do scams" PDF to you and asked you to read that, would you read that? Would anyone read that? Whereas this sort of gamification way, it's simplistic, and I'm glad they didn't spend a lot of money on it, but they need to capture people where they are going for help and getting the wrong outcomes. They are getting the wrong outcomes on social media. So to actually gamify it, think back, have you seen that timing the market game? it's also shitty UI. So, and people can play with it and it helps them see timing the market is just gambling. This is actually pretty smart from their perspective because they know people are getting bad outcomes on social media. So they are giving them something that's gamified, very similar, well, badly copied from Clio is my feel, because it's very Clio-like. Clio will roast you on your spending and that kind of thing. And they're more down with the kids than you are, Abram. Sorry.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, so you think people would actually engage with this and take something meaningful out of it?
Firstly, it's from the FCA. So lots of people would know that this is the regulator. And if you think they've got loads of guides on crypto and don't, scam smart and what to think about before you're investing. And they're pretty good guides, but they are also smart enough to know that most people don't read anything. No, it doesn't matter how much education content we put out on anywhere, people do not read it. So if you create something that's a little bit gamified, that's a bit like how they engage with their friends or on social media, all these fast messages and no speaking, no reading, but engaging in that way, I do think they'll help people think again, because you then have a reason to doubt, because, are you just catching on to a hype, or are you actually looking at things sensibly? I do think it will make people think again. Not everyone, and not everyone would engage with it, but they're far more likely to engage with a game than they are with a PDF. I can guarantee you that. So from that perspective, I think they are just recognizing that people are really getting bad outcomes on social media. So where do they need to go to reach them? Not on their website. They need to go to social media. To me, it's a pretty smart move. They are very, very determined to do something about the advice gap. And from that perspective, doing something like this is progressive. I would never dream that they would have done that. And I think hats off.
Yeah, look, I'm going to come down probably somewhere between those two positions. I'm glad they're trying something. I'd be super interested to know actually who they're targeting, because I don't know that they're targeting young people. I don't want to cast aspersions on my wife, but she's not.
You're in trouble for that one.
She's middle bracket age-wise, right? She's younger than me, but she's not what you'd call a young person anymore. Bless her. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying that. So if they're targeting people who are kind of her generation, unadvised on social media, maybe that it doesn't matter so much that the UI is as it is.
What did she think? What did she think of this thing?
Well, so she handed it straight over to me on the basis she recognised who the FCA were and thought that would be something I'd be interested in rather than her, which is a bit of a shame. It would be interesting actually to see if any of her friends had engaged with it and what the outcome had been from it. I mean, I guess, look, you've got to try these things, right? We're forever complaining that the FCA is regulating us, the good guys, and not closing down the scams. If this helps, if it stops more people being scammed, there's one less thing for us to complain about, which is going to be a good thing. Right?
I mean, it's way more interesting than COBs, isn't it? Can't they do COBs?
It's a low bar.
I'd be happy if I can engage with COBs on that, and then I'd be like, that's way more interesting reading.
Won't we all?
So
yeah.
No, I wonder how much they're spending on the social media ads. I'd be more worried about that than the build cost, Abram, because who are they targeting? What is the profiles that they're looking at? How are they reaching them? What sorts of social media strategy have they got for that? So that's a good point, Matt, because I do agree. It wouldn't be people, I wouldn't even say I don't engage with something like that. I pretended to be, when I did it, I was more thinking like, how would someone in their 20s react to this? Not that I am down with the kids either, Abram, but I can at least imagine.
Well, you're sadly more down with the kids than I
reckon so. I think I win on that one.
Yeah, because I was looking at it, I played with it twice and thinking, what is this?
But we also don't put ourselves in other people's shoes. Like if they are getting, and I don't know if you both have seen some of the ads or the nonsense that's being spewed out there around money, they're getting help from that. And because, followers or reach is what gives credibility, there's nothing concrete behind it. So it's actually quite a smart way of them trying to help people see that, don't just follow what everyone says, because that is a big problem. Loads of people buy stuff or think that trading is investing. To help people understand that in a very way more engaging way, I think is very commendable.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. I thought I would bring that to the table and it would provoke a response, and it did. So I'm glad I brought it. On a slightly less fun topic, maybe, but we've got to talk about it, right? Because this is topical, and between Ep.1 and Ep.2, we had a fairly major event because we had the budget from Rachel Reeves. I again volunteered this on the table. Just interested in the views of both of you, really. I mean, you're both business owners, so you're going to have a view personally. But to me, it ended up being a bit of a damp squib in the end, given all the briefings and leaks that there were beforehand, and then the fact that we actually got the budget pre-budget, so we could have a good look through. I mean, our take on it, for what it's worth, it's a lot of spending now, and actually, to be fair, some of the spending I absolutely agree with. There's plenty of serious rationale that's gone into why to spend that money, but then the taxation is deferred until later, so you're sort of balancing something up by spending now and taxing later, which to me seems odd. And there were some very odd tax raising measures in there, and some that will have a direct impact on what we're doing as financial advisors. The reduction in the relief on VCTs from 30% to 20%. I don't know whether VCTs are something either of you have been involved in, but that, I would think, probably kills that market off a bit, because you need an incentive to invest in those smaller UK companies that you get through VCTs. Salary sacrifice on pensions, that was a real hit, I think, for financial planners, albeit it doesn't come in until April 29, which is 3 or 4 months before the next election. So I'm not quite what's going on there. I don't know. Yeah, well, I mean, over to you. I mean, Helen, are you first? What were your immediate reactions?
I do think the challenge with the budget is almost not the budget, it's the hype and the run up to it, in terms of the sort of questions and uncertainty that causes, and people start imagining all sorts, and the same things come up time and time again. And really, it's not helpful as a process in itself, because it just causes uncertainty for people, because it shows a real lack of trust that the right decisions is going to be made, a lack of trust that things won't be done in a way to make it harder for everyone. And that's been my repeat feelings about the budget. It's always about, people not trusting that tax money is going to get spent well and they're going to get screwed over. That's basically the build up to it. And I do agree, the salary sacrifice one, I have seen some misunderstandings on it as well, because it's the NI, not the tax. And, people are confused already about pensions. Do we need more confusion? I just don't see it. So the businesses will be hit more than the employees on that one. It seems like business is generally hammered, which, when we need growth, I think is a bit of a ridiculous tactic from that perspective. But yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing with this sort of kite flying is that it's the most damaging part of the process. And unfortunately, it is, in my view, of, damned if you do and damned if you don't. If the Treasury doesn't sort of front run all this news to get people's reactions to it, then there is a chance that they are going to surprise people. Equally, it is completely and utterly ridiculous, some of the things that were being, sort of talked about before the actual budget, some of the rumor, they're just ridiculous. I want to say my favorite one, but the two worst ones, and I don't really know that this is the Treasury. There is a particular providers or, set of providers in the industry. Every single year, I'm trying not to swear, yeah, like every single year, they say the Treasury is going to do something to pension. They're going to take, they're going to take away tax-free lump sum. And there is a particular pension expert whose name I will not dignify by mentioning, who wrote a piece, I think in the Sunday Times, and says something to the effect of, I'm a pension expert, I'm taking my tax-free lump sum. This is reckless, ridiculous. So look, if we're going to blame Rachel Reeves for all of this, the Treasury for all this kite flying, we absolutely have to be responsible, as not just as an industry, but also as a profession. You see, I think a lot of these speculations are just, ridiculous. The other one that's been super damaging from what I hear is the exit tax on entrepreneurs. Again, these sort of things are just unhelpful.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if you saw the news about the amount of money that had been withdrawn pre-budget. I mean, you can see a rationale for it. It was interesting to see the difference. I'm going to throw someone under the bus here. So Chris Mason on the BBC, you see his reaction this year and this budget to all of the front running of the news and the testing of various measures with the OBR that led to headlines, compared to under the previous government, how he was describing exactly the same behaviour. Under the Conservatives, he said it was to wrong foot the opposition, and it was super clever, and and wasn't this a wonderful way of doing pre-budget comms? And then for this one, all of a sudden it's she's got to resign because it's just dangerous, and market manipulation, all the rest of it. So some of the commentary has been absolutely over the top, completely. Where I think you're right. I mean, so I think you flagged a news story where there was the prediction was there was something like 10 billion had been withdrawn from markets as a result of not the budget itself, but speculation before the budget. I mean, that is so damaging. And we've seen it with clients where they've withdrawn pension tax-free cash, probably for that because they've read the very same article you read, Abraham, and nothing's happened in the budget to remove it. And it is, for financial journalists, it is the story that writes itself every single year, the removal of pension tax-free cash. And I think this year, some people just, I've probably heard it 25 times over a 25-year career as a financial planner, and it's just the straw that broke the camel's back this year, really.
It is so, sorry, Helena, if you want to chime in, I'll shut up for a sec. It is so ridiculous. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So there's like 60% increase in, the amount of tax-free cash being taken in the run-up to the budget. When you sit down and actually think about it, it is so hard to make this change to, in practice, in law. It is never going to be changes about pension are never going to be overnight, because you need it to walk through the system. The DB schemes need to walk, through it. It's never going to be a thing that happens, the day after the budget or even the following tax year. So why do we have people getting caught up with this? And indeed, in my experience, professionals, financial advice providers getting caught up with this nonsense. So I just feel that, yes, there is kite flying by Treasury, but also this is amplified by reckless journalists and providers for absolutely no justifiable reason whatsoever. The other thing that you alluded to was that 10 billion's been taken. 10 billion's been taken. So there's a news in the Telegraph, I think, something along the lines of, Reef triggers havoc in the stock markets as investors pull 10 billion in the 6 month up to the budget. I don't think actually that all of that is to do with the budget. I think we have had a very volatile start of the year, and there are all this talk about AI bubble and all these things. Investors do this from time to time. To me, it is just a reminder of the value of financial planning, behavioral coaching, and advice, that we had all of this nonsense at the start of the year where the leader of the free world seemed to be tweeting up chaos every time he took a dump from wherever porcelain situation room it was. And you had this kind of, speculation on LinkedIn and Twitter and social media about, markets. And yet portfolios have actually done extremely well this year. I think a 60-40 portfolio is done something like 12-13% this year. Investors get carried away by this nonsense. To put all of that blame at the feet of Treasury or the Chancellor again, is ridiculous. The final point I want to make, and I promise you I will shut up, is every year, twice now, everyone underestimate this lady. I wouldn't want to be the chancellor of this country. For what? Why? So in other words, she earns, I don't know, £170,000 a year. There is this incredible pressure on her from her backbenchers, from the business community, from the political opposition. Every time, we underestimated her. And when she stood up and she was reading this, one thing that struck me was how many ways you can make money. You can raise taxes as a chancellor. She is raising £8 billion from just freezing the tax threshold for 2 more years. Let's not forget the Conservatives who are supposed to know a thing or two about the labor curve and business. They did this. They started this. She just extended it for 2 more years, and she's raising £8 freaking billion. My favorite tax. I love salary sacrifice. I max out my salary sacrifice. This is why I have no money.
Good.
I max out my salary sacrifice every year. I love salary sacrifice because you get 20%, 25% I work out, 15% from employer NI, and 2% from if you're a higher taxpayer. So it's like, 17%, more going into your pension, and she's going to cap this. She waits till 2027.
9.
No, 9. 2029. That's
2029.
extraordinary.
2029.
Yeah.
You could still put £180,000 into your pension between now and when that rule comes in. Oh, actually, that's assuming that you have no carried forward allowance. You could put all your salary into salary sacrifice. But again, so between now and then, you could put a lot of money into this thing between now and then. So I think of it and think, that's bad. But actually, it's not that bad. So look, I mean, who would want this job? It's impossible to manage the pulse of this country, unfortunately, because of all these political, the different political constituencies that she has to pander to.
There you go. Thank you. That was a very good budget summary. That'll get some commentary on socials. Helena, you were gonna come in and give him some breakfast.
I really think that Abram should be running the budget game before the next budget, that we can just get on social media before and just explain all of those aspects and just let them play with that. They're more likely to listen.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I might be less likely to drive myself nuts as well. More likely to drive myself nuts as a result of this.
Abraham, you spotted something which I think's worth chatting about. Definitely worth getting Helena's view on. So there was something with a FOS and a write down. Is that right? Tell us all about that. Yes.
So FOS is right. So this is news in New Model Advisor. FOS wrote down £900,000 of expenses on failed AI project. So I don't know if it's project on a failed AI project. They've written off 900. This to me is part of a larger trend in corporate world where something like there's a piece of research that shows that. So this is again an article in the Forbes that says something like 95% of AI pilots fail within large organizations. So this is research by MIT Lab, and they said despite $30 to $40 billion in enterprise investment in generative artificial intelligence, AI pilot failure is officially the norm. 95% of corporate AI initiatives show zero return. Zero. So this is the title of the paper is The State of AI in Business in 2025. And sorry, one more thing. They actually said something to the effect of any productivity gain, if there is such a thing, from using AI accrues to the individual, not to the organization. They're not seeing the impact of this in corporate productivity or on the balance sheet or P&L. So Elena, you're the woman who's chosen to, what's the word, swap the joy of running a financial planning firm to training AI for a living. Tell us what's going on here.
So it's interesting because I first of all, I'm surprised it spent 900 grand on something that's sorting documents and understanding what documents is relevant for what case, because really it shouldn't cost that much for something that simple. But I think my view is I'm not surprised on the AI failures, because if we think about it, it's only been 3 years, really. It's super new technology. The agentic side of it is really what's lifted it for complex tasks quite a lot. But even that, I see people not really understanding the limitations of the technology, which is a big challenge. So first of all, how do you find good people that actually know what they're talking about to be able to build something for your business? How do you know you've identified the right use cases to actually build something for? Because we seem to have jumped in this AI is the solution to everything. Actually, as a technology, you're probably able to get something more reliable by using AI with deterministic code or another system to be able to do what they wanted to do in the first place, and not spend huge amount of money on consultants saying they're going to do this and that and misunderstanding it. So I think a big challenge is with AI, if you are wanting to make gains in a business that's actually going to be meaningful, you need to be very, very crystal clear on what that use case is. And what I've seen as a challenge is, I don't know if this is your same experience, but engineers will build what you tell them to build. But if you're not very clear on telling them what they need to be building, i.e. getting the actual person who's doing the job or the job that you're trying to replace, or what, that really specific knowledge, and getting them to be able to articulate and refine that in a way that can be built, you are going to get a lot of wasted money. And you cannot build something productive or useful in AI if you do not understand the limitations. Now, one of the limitations I find super fun and really interesting that people don't get is AI is a language predictor. So by definition, it tells you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
You ask it something, it will tell you what you want to hear. So if you had employees that just told you what you wanted to hear, your business wouldn't actually succeed. So how do you build in the contrasting skills that you needed to have to lift what AI can do, but also reality check it, because it's not going to do things right? So I think the strategy is just, this will solve problems and this will, save a lot of money and this will create a lot of efficiencies. But we are not good enough at sort of really breaking down what that needs to be and whether AI is the right tech for it. So it could be AI combined with tools in this case. So say, for example, I was building this FOS tool, then yes, to get someone to say, I'm looking at XYZ case, I need to know the documents for it. That document search tool, I might not use AI for it because it might not be the best solution for that. But I could give AI the tool to go and fetch the documents to be able to bring that together. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
AI in itself is not, it's progressed enormously, but it's not strong enough to be the tech solution on its own. It has to be combined with other stuff. And I think that's where businesses are not looking at it as, how does this fit into our ecosystem or our processes, or what is it that we actually specifically trying to do and achieve, and being able to define that in a way that will actually allow people to build it correctly. Because it does hallucinate. It will make errors. It will, those things is inherently built into the technology. You're not going to wipe that out no matter what you do. You need to be able to understand those limitations and build with that in mind, not find that a surprise at the end of spending 900.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It is probably it's a failure of procurement, isn't it? Probably, rather than actually deployment of the AI, which is super interesting. So Helen, just because you've built it and Abraham and I haven't, give us a sense of what AIDA does at the moment. Where have you got to with it, and keep it non-techie for me, if for no one else.
So let's build on what I said around AI's weaknesses, because that's really what's driven how we've approached this. What AI can do really, really well is mimic conversations. okay, you're talking to a psychopath because it can't feel, but it mimics conversations. It can be empathetic, it can adjust, it can personalize. So from a sort of advice process, think about the conversational front end, and us using conversational AI for that. It's text or voice. So whether that's sort of people speaking to it and then getting text responses back, or it actually having a conversation explaining, risk as an example. So there's a conversational front end, which is effectively, if you think about it, clients don't see what's in your brain as an advisor. They don't see the tools you're using as an advisor. They don't see how you're using their personal information. They speak to you. So that's the conversational front end. AI is pretty good at that. There's lots of, tweaks and things to do around it. You can change the tone, you can change how it approach, you can teach it different conversational styles, but you can do a huge amount of that. But if you go into ChatGPT and, for example, say, how do I invest? It doesn't know anything about you. It knows some things, but it won't know and understand what financial details or actually, goal-based details, or what are you aiming to do? Is it the right thing for you to do? That's what we would call a fact find, but effectively it's knowing the person and responding based on that knowledge. Does that make sense? So that's the second sort of part of our system. So it's what data points are we gathering, how we gather them progressively, and how we get the model to use it. Does that make sense? So that feeds into the responses. Then we have the knowledge base, because I really think there's big limitations of large language models, because 40% of it comes from Reddit. Do you really want Reddit to be telling customers what to do with their money? Absolutely not. So we set out to build our own knowledge base, which is proprietary. That's what we took through the exam. So we, it includes behavioral finance, all the stuff that, we've learned as advisors over time. And it's very similar to taking an advisor through the CII exams. You don't whack them straight in front of a client. You build up their experience of how to use that customer data, how to sort of use that knowledge, and then be able to actually articulate something that makes sense to a customer's rep. Does that make sense? So that knowledge base is cool. It includes things like decision trees. Is this right? When does this work? When doesn't it work? So really being able to answer the questions in detail, but not drawing from Reddit. And then we have deterministic tools. That's basically whether it's a cash flow forecast or calculation or an outcome that we want to show them different scenarios. And effectively the front end, so the conversational part, pulls on all three of those to be able to respond to a consumer. So in the same way, an advisor wouldn't think to show everyone all the textbooks of what they've learned and all the tools they're using in the background and how they're using the information of what they gain from the customer, client. It works in the same way. So effectively, we've just looked at, okay, how does an advisor, interact with clients and try to recreate it. It won't be the same in some ways. In some ways, it'll be way better.
So is Ada out in the wild, so to speak? Is she dealing with? Sorry, I'm humanizing her already. Is she dealing with individuals? What's she doing? And what, I guess, what's the target for her?
So we're looking to integrate with large organizations, so particularly people who are building out targeted support and things like that, because the big flaw with us having a new shiny thing as an industry is that we think that shiny thing on its own is going to work. And the reality is it won't. If you have a limited journey where you're taking someone down with key data points, you're really going to be the same as just taking them for a tick box on a website to say, look at your retirement. And I don't see those calculators ever solving the advice gap or solving any problems for people. So we believe that engagement is key. So can you bring someone on that journey to actually helping them understand and then take them to a targeted support journey to get the right product solution? So we're looking to work with large organizations on that, but we also have the D2C side, because that's where we learn. So that's where we sort of learn from real consumers, see how they behave, what they do, and building that into our system.
Abraham and I last episode said, right, we're just going to abandon the advice gap, and financial advisors shouldn't be going anywhere near it. So what I'm hearing is we can just entirely leave it to your responsibility, essentially.
The thing that I find funny is that it's such a big gap, and we don't sort of see that. Will the future clients engage with us in the same way if we don't help them now? I mean, RDR did many things, but it also killed off the ability to help people with less money enormously. And I don't know about you, Matt, but I had plenty of clients who built up their wealth because the man from the Pru knocked on their door and gave them, a 20 quid investment a month. And that was a starter for them. And if you fundamentally think about it, the core building blocks for wealth for people is income and spending. So the advice gap clients don't have a problem with finding investments. They have a problem of getting them to a place where they can actually invest well, build wealth, and do things in the right way. And if we don't create the wealth of the future, that's gonna mean advisors won't. They'll still be clients. I'm being dramatic, but we shouldn't have such a big gap. And I think targeted support is going to be a bigger challenge for advisors than we think.
I disagree with you, Elena, and and I have a lot of questions that I want to do this. So, do you see Ada as addressing fundamentally, the advice gap? In other words, people who cannot, or for whatever reason, have access to a human financial advisor. And let's face it, financial advice only touches 6-7% of people in this country. So there's a huge gulf. And look, I'm going to offend some people, but I will. This is my assumption. The bottom third of people have no wealth of any kind to do. This is the ONS data. Have no wealth of any kind to deal with. Then you have the next third, whose wealth is made up largely of property assets and very little in liquid savings and investment as we would know it. They are, of course, building wealth in the workplace through the workplace savings scheme. And then, of course, you have let's say, the upper third who do have some assets, but financial some and liquid investment, and they are still building wealth. But financial advice only touches the top, frankly, 6% of wealth in this country. So is your view that Ada is going to help those people who can't have access to human financial advisor? Or is your end game really to go after the client of human financial advisor? In other words, Shulmat and I, what's the word? Start writing our business exit strategy because you're going to come in and eat our lunch. And I am happy for any of this scenario. I just want to know.
I still own Smith & Waddle Financial Planning. I haven't sold out. Does that answer your question? Definitely.
Start off.
No, we're not after advisor clients.
Are you just being nice? Are you just giving me the answer, a response that AI will give me because it's appealing to my bias?
No, Abram, because there's always a but. So we're not going after advised clients. The market is huge. The need is huge. If you talk about building wealth and workplace, 25% of people stay in their default funds. So what opportunity cost is that for someone, because they're 20 or 30, they won't see someone until they have an oh shit moment in 55. That isn't right. We shouldn't sort of congratulate ourselves that we have this glory, pedestal that we're helping all these people, but we're screwing over tons of people who can't get access to help because they're going to finfluencers who's telling them to invest in crypto. That this isn't okay. What I think is a real challenge, and this is where I've thrown this question out and to obviously lose most of the room. But how do you actually think this is going to work if for the next 15 or 20 years Ada is helping customers, they build their wealth, they're getting to a nice chunky place, and somewhere they sort of seeing, okay, maybe I should sense check this with a human, but then they go and speak to a human advisor and the fees are 15, 20, 30 times more. And then they wait 5 days for an email. It takes 3 months to get something back. They've had everything instant all this time. And then they question, is it worth it? Now, I think that's going to happen in all service industries. I don't think we're unique. I think every single service industry is going to get disrupted in the same way Amazon and internet shopping disrupted retail. Like, if we sit here and say that's not going to happen, then I don't know, I'd question our intelligence, because it is going to happen, because things will move and people will adapt and they'll do things in a different way. I don't think it's the end of the human race. I don't think we all need to jack up the thought that we'll have a job and that kind of thing. I don't think it's that dramatic. But look how much our ways of communication has changed over the last 15 years. I do not take phone calls. Because I don't want to. And I'm like, no, people don't do that anymore. They do everything on text. So the world evolves. But I don't think it's always going to be necessarily as fast as we think in some ways. But I do think there's a real challenge that if a digital service is servicing someone at a really low cost in a very engaging way, will people see the value of speaking to a person instead if the cost is 20 or 30 times more? I think I would really question that.
The unequivocal answer from me is absolutely. I'll give you the counter to these views. So first of all, what you're asking, I cannot do simply from a pure commercial point of view. So in other words, Matt running a boutique, armchair-based financial planning business, not that he's not a nice guy. I know he's a nice guy. I know he gives 10% of his profit to charity. He goes to church on Sunday. I remember calling him during COVID, and I said, where are you, Matt? And he says to me, I'm in a church or something. But you're asking him to do what is commercially impossible, which is go after clients who cannot afford his service. I don't know how he does it commercially. That's point number one. And I don't know why you would be asking him to go after this, let's call it blue ocean strategy of underserved clients, because you should want to serve that. I love you going after that client segment to serve. Your question is a powerful one. I love the way you position it by questioning my intelligence, which is like, if someone has been dealing with ADA for 10, 15, 25 years, and they do eventually build wealth, will they go and find a human financial advice? My answer is yes. You know why? Because complexity compounds as you build wealth. I have seen this, and we've seen this in business. When I started Timeline, I wanted to open an account with Barclays. They wouldn't give me an account. I wanted to open an account with any of the big guys. They wouldn't give me an account. When I raised, 1.6 million, whatever, I couldn't get an appointment from any of the big banks. So I went to the tiny little startup, banks, Revolut and what's the other one? The one I'm looking for, Sterling. They open an account, they got all these things, and then fast forward 3 years later, we got to a business that they just cannot serve because we have complexity in our business. We have money coming in from multiple platforms, and they're looking at this and saying, what is this? They do not have the capability to serve us at the price point that they've. And I held my nose when our CFO said, Abraham, I've got to go to one of the dreadful established banks. But we did. So my point is, like, people will grow complexity in their lives. And remember, the small IFA firm doesn't need hundreds and hundreds of clients. An advisor needs 60 households who can pay them, who can get, a great service from them. Unless you are my friend Pete Matthews, there are a few others in the marketplace. I really don't know how the small advisor is going to go after this gap.
No, I agree, because you can't do it with humans. You've got to use technology. So I don't disagree with you there. And I'm not saying advisors should solve the advice gap. But what I'm saying is there will be a definite pressure on fees if you look at those two next to each other. So if I was an advice business, I would double down on the human aspect, because you're right. For some things, people still have personal trainers, even though they can go to the gym. You know, I'm not saying that's going to disappear, but if you put them like for like, and one is 30 times more, and the only difference is that you get to speak to someone, I think people will question that. So advisors can do a lot to create efficiencies. I have not seen that trickle down into fees.
Oh, absolutely. We haven't seen that.
That will happen.
Yeah, we haven't seen that, and I'll let Matt get a word in. But I totally agree with you. Matt and I, we did this thing in at the PFS where we said, show of hands, if you have seen 10% productivity in your business as a result of using technology, and something like 50% of the using AI and technology, and 50% of the room went up. And I'm thinking, no, I don't think so. It doesn't show up in the numbers. The growth in advice revenue is practically zero once you've extracted market. So there is no improvement in productivity. And I agree with you, though, that AI isn't coming to save advisor firm in the way that they think it is. It's not going to save you if you haven't got your pricing point right. It's not going to save you if your data is fragmented and all over the place. It has solved some low-hanging fruits. The one I can point to is meeting notes. It will probably help with things like suitability report preparation, but only if you have the data, integrated in a way that that makes sense, that is easy for AI. And I like the way you broke this down into the part that you're doing deterministically and the part that you're using AI to do. I can talk to you about all the things that we've been doing internally. We've had our own failed application of AI internally into internal process. We didn't spend 900 grand. You would be pleased to know. So there's a lot we agree on is likely to impact the business of advice.
Yeah, so I'm at the risk of being the vanilla one today. I am going to agree with both of you. I mean, I do think there is going to be a downward pressure on fees, on advisor fees. I don't think we've seen that yet, but I think we will see that at some stage, because you're right. You've got to be able to transition a client from a directed approach, a low cost directed, guided approach, into what is going to be a higher cost, fully advised approach. And that gap is easier to bridge if the price point gets closer. So that is true. I do also think, though, that your other point was around timescale. So when you transition from dealing with Ada to dealing with a financial advisor, you shouldn't have to wait 3 months for the information to be absorbed by the advisor and then replayed with the responses. And I would like us as a profession to aim for something better than being a necessary evil, which I think is what you described it as, Abraham, which is that transition to the big banks. We need to get better as financial advisors. We need to get slicker, faster, more tech-enabled, so that transition doesn't feel quite as clunky to those clients who will at some stage. I mean, it is the inevitable march of progress, isn't it? So we will get to a stage where we can't rely on clients inheriting money and us just going to go and see them and eat biscuits and drink tea. There will be clients that will start to want to transition from guided or targeted advice to fully advised. But we've got to bridge a bit of that gap between the two, the tech, the experience, the service, and then also probably a bit on the fees as well.
Wonderful stuff. And I guess we will end on a very, very, very sad note. I say sad note. But this is a piece of news about Willis Towers Watson taking 2 years. It's taking 2 years. I think this headline is from the FT Advisor, I believe, where it's taking a client, an advised client, 2 years to move their pension, to transfer their pension away from Willis Towers Watson, because the advisor just couldn't get basic information. I know from our own experience that Willis Towers Watson doesn't respond to letters of authority or digital letter of authority of any kind. Maybe if you write to them directly, they might, but not digitally. And this has really bad implication for advice, I think, and of course for the poor client who's stuck in the in the end of this story.
Yeah, so look, I'll comment on this one. Is it a bad story to end on? I don't know. It's always good to make sure we give at least one provider a good kicking on these podcast episodes. I would say WTW are probably responsible for the transfer that's taken the longest for one of our clients. We've had ones where platforms have made errors, so it isn't exclusively in this kind of pension administrator, big occupational pension administration field, but they are incredibly hard to deal with. Absolutely. I don't know if they're doing it deliberately to slow down and prevent transfers, but their interpretation of the rules is so over the top, it's ridiculous. So we've had advised clients where WTW have insisted that they sit down with the money helper. It's money helper, isn't it? Where you have to have an interview just to make sure that you're not being scammed. And that all comes from a good place. There have been plenty of pension scams in the past. As far as I can tell from the numbers, those have reduced. And probably as a result of putting in this kind of cooling off period or this need to speak to someone to just check that you're not being scammed. But WTW they're really doubling down on this, just making the whole process as arcane and as painful as possible. And maybe I'm ascribing bad intent to a firm which doesn't have they're not an individual, so they can't have a sort of a bad moral core. Maybe it's just that they're incompetent. That's another possibility. It's probably one or the other, frankly. But yeah, without a doubt, I mean, they are one of the worst to deal with.
Helena, surely you can put a positive spin on this. Tell us how AI is going to help us with with bad pension administrators and providers. Slow, painful process stuck in the 1950s.
I don't know why we have. I mean, how long have we been having this conversation about how rubbish this is? And it's never been solved. Nobody gets on the LOA bandwagons because they don't want to do it. And it's loads of no, we put barriers in place for no reason and make things harder than it needs to be. And the amount of times that advisors have to apologize for providers being utterly ridiculous, they don't understand how much we screen their clients from how shit they are, to be honest. That was always the case. But no, I don't have any hope for any of the pension providers, to be honest.
Well, on that cherry note, thank you guys for your time and your wisdom. Thank you for making this fun discussion. And that's another episode of the SoapBox in the bag. Helena Waddle, thank you very much for your time and for your wisdom.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.